Hello and welcome, finally, to another episode of Prophetcast. Today is August 24th, 2014. I'm Dave Curry. My wife, Deanna Curry, was supposed to be joining us, but for some reason technical difficulties abound here. As always, Prophetcast is brought to you by the Thought Prophets. The Thought Prophets is an atheist/secular group dedicated to the promotion of open discussion, continuous learning, skepticism, and science. You can check us out at our website, thoughtprophets.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Prophetcast. You can join in our discussion on Facebook by simply searching for Thought Prophets. Oh, is that you playing that? Sorry, got distracted there, Jonathan. Jeez. Yeah, you can find us on Facebook simply for searching for Thought Prophets. Find us on iTunes and Podbean, or go to podcast.thoughtprophets.com, or you can find our entire backlog of episodes on YouTube by searching for Prophetcast. And joining me tonight for this episode is once again actually another Washingtonian activist, blogger, and author of the new children's book Grandmother Fish, Jonathan Tweet.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a dummy of the Grandmother Fish. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Absolutely. Pleasure having you here, and it's actually being able to have you here with all the technical difficulties that we've been having tonight. It's unreal. Yeah, great to have you, and that was the book there. So before we start really getting into that, as you've seen, whenever we have somebody on the show, we like to just do kind of like a little get to know you section. Give us a little bit of your history and things like that.
All right. So I'm a professional game designer, and I've been doing geeky games, like tabletop role-playing games mostly, for about 25 years. And maybe in that realm, my biggest claim to fame was back in 2000. I was the lead designer on Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition. That's when Wizards of the Coast here in Washington had bought Dungeons and Dragons and did a big revamp, and it was hugely successful. And that's sort of my most prominent piece of work. But I've done a lot of other games. Some of them are sort of indie favorites. So that's been a lot of fun. And then just recently, for the first time, I went into children's science. And I've got a book that teaches evolution to preschoolers, the first one to do that. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, just to kind of get into, your work with Wizards.
Yeah.
I mean, what exact? Because I love D&D. We're doing a Pathfinder group right now, and so you were with 3rd edition.
Yeah, exactly. So the team on 3rd edition was me, Monty Cook, and Skip Williams, and I was the lead, and we really had a big task of revising the whole game, sort of making sense out of everything and trying to make everything work, smoothly. And we just did a lot of sort of cleanup, streamlined things, made things more consistent, so that the way you rolled the dice for one kind of act, you also did for another, and what have you. And so, yeah, that whole basic system where you roll a 20-sided die and add bonuses and try to get as high as you can. That was sort of the system that I brought to D&D, and I think it's worked really well.
Right. Yeah, because that was when that was a 3rd or 4th edition that they started to introduce like insight rolls instead of like having to roll for motivation and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure which particular rule you're talking about there.
I don't remember exactly.
So 3rd edition was a big sort of a house cleaning. Like Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition had gone in a bunch of different directions. There were all sorts of optional rules, and it had sort of spread out into all sorts of different sort of genres and different ways of playing. And what we did with 3rd edition is sort of go back to the core and find sort of one way of play that everyone could return to, and then maybe branch out from there again, but sort of bring everybody back to one place so that people were having more like the same experience.
Right, so that there wasn't so much interpretation and variation between the game.
Yeah, that's right.
Nice, nice. And so, what you said, like, what really got you into, from moving from like the gaming
Yep.
universe, and like you said, yeah, moving into children's science, and
Right. So that's, I mean, obviously that's really different. Uh, a lot of it is just being a dad. I had a daughter 19 years ago, and when she was young, I tried to explain the world and the universe to her and evolution. And it got me thinking about how can you explain evolution to a little kid.
right,
And so I sort of noodled on a book actually for about 15 years, but it wasn't until last fall that really finally clicked, and I made the last changes to the book that sort of made it ready for prime time. And so people had such a positive response to the book when I talked about it that
hmm
I decided I wanted to go on Kickstarter and raise money that way. And
right,
yeah, we were successful. We raised 3 times the money that we were asking for, and so now the book's going to come out early next year.
perfect.
Yeah, it's great.
Perfect. So, I mean, I guess, raising 3 times the amount that you were originally, shot for,
Yeah,
that definitely brought up the date for it, right?
yeah,
Perfect. Wow.
yeah. No, and it's very exciting. And as part of the campaign, I reached out to people like Daniel Dennett and Steven Pinker, and I got endorsements from them that I could quote, and that has made a world of difference. They both tweeted about it,
hmm
so it's been very rewarding to leave um, the gaming field for a little while, where lots of people know me and I've won awards, and people expect great things from me, and then to come into a children's science book where nobody knows me, and find some people, some really big science and evolution advocates who would back the book. That's been very exciting for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, from what I've seen so far, I mean, it definitely looks like that, moving into this unknown area for you has already been successful. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like you were saying, because I have a young daughter. She's just over a year and a half, and
Oh, okay.
I mean, I have thought about it's like, how am I going to try and explain these kind of concepts,
That's right.
to her? And it's like, will she be able to understand, evolution
Right.
with just how technical it is?
Right.
And yeah, I really think that this is an amazing idea because there isn't any other like major book that goes into the same kind of depth or
I don't
even
think there is
tackle
like.
evolution at
Yeah,
all.
that's right. When I started, I thought, I'm going to do a book for evolution about evolution for preschoolers. One of them. And then when I looked around, I saw there were no other books aimed at that young an audience. And
Right.
so now I'm doing the only book about evolution for preschoolers. It's pretty exciting.
Nice.
And I think evolution is really difficult to understand because our brains evolved to operate at a local scale of time and space, right?
Right.
Maybe think in hours or years and miles or what have you. And evolution operates on over millions of years with
Right.
no
Right.
no intentional agent making it happen, and it just operates in a different way from all the things that we evolved to interact with. And so that's why you see people so quickly try to use their, what makes sense to a human brain and put that onto evolution, right? So people think that there's a goal of evolution and maybe humans are
Right.
the epitome and everything is evolving to be more and more like a human, or they think that, some sort of entity created people or, has been
Not
guiding
so much
evolution all
alien.
around, or what have you, and
Yeah.
it's just really hard for people to get evolution, not just because it's technical, but because it doesn't work the way that our brains expect things to work. It's like quantum physics.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like like from Cosmos, Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he said that it sounds like something that's straight out of a storybook, that's out of myth,
Yeah.
but it's if you have even a basic grasp what evolution actually is, it starts to make more and more sense the more that you learn about it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think that that's the great thing about what you did with the book there, because when I first got in contact with you and I told my wife about it, she immediately downloaded the digital
Oh,
copy
good.
that you had offered.
Yep.
Yeah, and showed it to my daughter, and she was enjoying it for however much she can understand
I
it.
mean, yeah, she's 1 year old, right? Yeah.
Exactly. But she likes books that we give her anyway.
All
So
right.
so speaking of that, I mean, did we want to go through the book?
Sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to jump in.
Let me do some screen share, and we'll show people who are at home
All right.
following on video. We'll take a look at our the PDF. So
Let me
this
just
is the
select.
dummy. A friend of mine, Karen Lewis. She's actually a child's science illustrator. So she
Mm-hmm.
does illustrations like this fish here that are accurate enough that they can go in a science book, but friendly enough that they can go in a kid's book.
Right.
And then what you said about evolution being a story, like a myth, part of the idea here is to make evolution fit more of a narrative the way that a kid would expect a story to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I take some liberties with the history of our evolution, but basically what I do is you look all the way back from the first jawed fish to humans, and we look at basically evolutionary milestones along the way, and then each one of those milestones is represented by an ancestor, which is one of the grandmothers of the story. So it starts with grandmother fish, right? And she lived 400 million years ago, a long time ago.
Right. Yeah, and
And
it's
then
kind of difficult for them to grasp, a couple 100 million years ago. So.
Exactly. So everything is kid level, and so each ancestor sort of represents two evolved features or derived features that are sort of new since the previous grandmother. So the first grandmother starts out and she can wiggle and chomp, and of course, can the kid wiggle? Can the kid chomp? And
Pretty much.
so now the kid starts to interact with the book on a kinesthetic level, right? Kids love animals. They love to, act like animals and mimic. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really cute to see kids having this book read to them. So here's the grandmother fish. She can wiggle and chomp. And then we have what's really a very simple phylogenetic tree that shows grandmother fish and the different kinds of fish that evolved from those first jawed fish, like sharks and ray-finned fish. That's most of the fish in the world are ray-finned fish.
Right.
But then you have these lobe-finned fish, and one branch of that group is the amniotes, or what we call as reptiles, colloquially. So one of grandmother fish's grandchildren was grandmother reptile. That's our grandmother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like ray-finned fish is not our grandmother. That's our cousin, right? That we're related, but not directly descended from them.
Right.
Right. So now we go to the next stage, and from fish you go to reptile, right? And what can reptile do? Reptile can crawl, and reptile can breathe, and so the child crawls and breathes and what have you, and that now you can see where the pattern starts. You've got grandmother reptile, and she's got a bunch of different grandchildren, like the dinosaurs and birds and Dimetrodon and lizards. Well, those creatures can wiggle and jump and crawl and breathe, so they're all picking up these behaviors, derived behaviors or evolved capabilities from their descendants, and then one of reptiles' grandchildren is mammal. So then now you've got grandmother mammal, right? And her babies could squeak, and she could cuddle. Cuddle was a really tough one for me. Like, I want to talk about nursing because the ability for mammal mothers to nurse their kids obviously is a huge evolutionary advance and really put us ahead. But how you talk to preschoolers about nursing, it can be a little iffy. So I finally came up with cuddle as the term, and we evolved cuddling behavior as part of nursing originally. So our ability to be warm and cuddly comes from our mammalian heritage, and so I was very happy with that compromise for
Oh yeah,
How to
absolutely. And
nursing. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's also goes along with kind of a like protection aspect, family
Yeah.
aspect, that whole.
Yeah, so that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up. You can see, especially in the mammals, there's a family aspect, and we wound up adding that in sort of late when we realized sort of how powerful it was. So grandmother fish doesn't have a family really, but grandmother reptile has a little clutch of eggs. So you're starting to hint that okay, there's a family involvement, and you get to mammal, of course. Then it's a bunch of cute little babies cuddling with mom and
Right.
what have you.
Cute little animals and all that.
And
Yeah.
and kids love this, right? And the thing is, the kid is in a mom's or dad's lap having this book read to them. So when they see a mom cuddling with the kids, right? Like that's what they're experiencing themselves, right? So
Right.
now
Yeah.
this is the hint that this book is actually about the child, right? Like so far the child thinks that this is about animals, but we're leading into sort of the whiz bang finish, which you'll see in a minute.
Hmm.
Okay, so grandmother mammal, she had a bunch of different kinds of children. They could wiggle and chomp and crawl and breathe and squeak and cuddle. It leads us to our grandmother ape, right? And that great ape can grab, an ape can hoot. And you can see that Karen Lewis, she added the child elements to the book. So I was going to do it as, grandmother ape is by herself, but of course Karen's a mother and she knows children's books, and so she added
Right.
right, a baby ape, right? And so that family theme keeps going and carries all the way through to now the first ape, right? That line diverges into a bunch of different apes, and one of them is us. There's a really cute scene in one of our videos where you see a 6-year-old girl spot grandmother human in the book, and suddenly it dawns on her that all this wiggling and chomping and crawling and breathing and whatever, like that's really about her, and this is where she came from. And
Wow.
she's, yeah, it's really exciting to sort of see that realization dawn on a child's face.
Yeah, and I really think that you do kind of, with the way that you have, the cousins and the grandmothers and everything like that, it really does bring in that familiar family aspect
Yeah, yeah,
into it. And that's really, actually really cool how it kind of, you do slip that in there, how we are all technically part of this,
right.
this family.
We're
We're
all
not,
related.
yeah, we're all related on some level,
Yeah,
but there are other aspects of that family that we are more closely related to than
right.
others.
That's right. Yeah, and I was working with Eric Mickel of the National Center for Science Education, and he really wanted to emphasize, that everything is related. Like we're related to all living things.
Right.
He thought that was that's the key message you need to get across. And he's one of the ones that suggested using the cousin terminology and what have you, and that's worked out great for us.
Yeah. Nice.
So now we're at the end of the book where grandmother human, that's the fifth grandmother, right? She can walk and she can talk, and then she had a bunch of grandchildren, and then we're going to end with a 2-page spread that shows sort of human diversity, people from all over the world, and
Oh, okay.
maybe a dog and a cat, and a couple of people who backed us really generously on Kickstarter are actually going to have pictures of themselves or their loved ones
Oh,
worked into here.
turned into the drawing on there.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll be on
Nice.
this last spread. Yeah,
Nice.
that's
Awesome.
really sweet. And then there's actual science in the book as well. We've got a simple phylogenetic tree that lets you see where all the grandmothers link together, and it also shows just sort of hints of how the tree branches out to, plants versus animals, and among animals there's sort of the invertebrates versus the vertebrates, and it brings it all together and gives you lots of details to look at. And I love phylogenetic trees because they're so filled with detail about which groups evolved from which groups and when they split and which ones are more closely related to which others.
Right.
That's something that creationists just can't do, right? Like you'll never see right, a big encyclopedia describing all the different kinds of animal and which go in which kind and which go in which other kind or whatever. Like there's no, since it's not accurate, they can't actually do it. Whereas
Right. Like you wouldn't expect to have this kind of level of detail or even information put like a book that has the Noah story.
Exactly.
They wouldn't have the the different kinds in
Right.
there because they don't have a leg to stand on in that kind of
Right, because you can't do it. You can't say this is horse kind and all these species all belong to horse kind, and then but there's a dividing line between, I don't know, horse and donkey kind or whatever it is. Like because that's not a legitimate biological concept.
Right.
You can't actually do anything that detailed with it. You just have to hand wave. And so when we can just show somebody something like a phylogenetic tree, and it's like, look at how carefully we know the evolutionary history of life on Earth, right? Like you can't even compare it to what creationists have. So I love the phylogenetic tree. It's so much more organic and sort of contingent and mysterious almost than when Linnaeus in the late 1700s, Linnaeus laid out orders and families and classes of animals, but they're all sort of just big blocky categories, right? Right. So like all the mammals were in separate little groups, but now every clade, every group of animals is nested into a larger clade and so forth. And so instead of bats and pigs and deer all being sort of next to each other, you can actually trace, bats split off from pigs and deers before pigs and deers split off from each other, or what have you. You have this. So it's just an amazing amount of information. It's sort of like the periodic table of elements, but with just way more going on.
Yeah, and this concept here also, the whole tree that you have going on, not only is that appealing, for children already. I mean, the whole layout of, the bright colors and the different spreading off. They may go one way and then choose to go back and go another way down the tree and everything. It's this already is looking like it would be helpful for even adults to understand.
Absolutely. Right? Like, I used to think that fungi and plants were more closely related to each other than they are to animals.
Right.
Because animals move and plants and funguses don't. Well, that's a very primitive way to divide things if you look at it molecularly on our DNA level, right?
Exactly.
It turns out that fungi and plants are not that closely related to. It's fungi and animals are more closely related, right? And you can see that on our phylogenetic tree, right? Mm-hmm. Why are jellyfish so weird? Well, they split off from all the regular animals way early, right? Before, even before we were worms or whatever, right? Like really early.
And before, like fish, and you can see some of the crustaceans and things like that in there also. Wow, huh.
Yeah, so that, I love science, so that's great. And then, yes, that's another really exciting thing is doing science for children gets people excited. Like everyone sees the value in it. Everybody wants you to succeed. It's really rewarding to do science for children.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than actually getting kids involved with science. Like I try to get my nieces and nephews. I have a couple, little nieces and nephews, and I try to get them involved in science as much as I can.
Yeah.
Kind of difficult when their parents aren't necessarily willing to deal with it, but I try as much as
you do what you can.
Yeah.
And then I have a bunch of science in the back for the parents, and this is basically information for parents to digest and to find some way to explain to their kid, depending on how old the kid is. Right. It also just gives them background, like when I talked about grandmother reptile, what clade of animals was that? What group of animals was that really? And when did they evolve? And what's this about crawling and breathing? So it's the notes to explain, figuratively it's grandmother ape. Literally, it was a breeding population of the first hominoids or whatever. Right. So that's a lot of fun. There's section on how to head off common errors. Like I said before, evolution is really hard to understand because it's counterintuitive, so you need to be prepared for the kind of mistakes your kid is likely to make so that you can head those off. And then I even have one page of how to explain natural selection, because one fact about evolution is common descent. Like all of us vertebrates all descended from these early fish, right? But like even Lamarck knew that. The other part of evolution, the theory of evolution, is natural selection. How did we evolve? How did this breeding population of fish diverge into all these different kinds of animals? And that's what I deal with here. It's like, and again, it's give the parents some information so that they are able to and explain that to the kids.
That's really nice that you actually put that in there because, like you were saying, that some of these concepts are even I'll unselect you there, so are difficult for even adults to understand, and so having those footnotes there, if a parent is not necessarily as comfortable with evolution, this helps them so that they can feel better about talking to their kids about it, because that's one thing that I'm fearful of and I can't wait for when she asks me something that I don't know the answer to, and we can actually say, let's go find out together.
No, I've got a friend with a young daughter, and she asked, who borned the first mother?
Wow.
Where did the first mom come from? Right?
Sure.
Well, that's a really hard question, right? Especially like, what defined mom? Like when a bacterium splits into two, that's not the first mom. That's something else,
really,
right? So it's difficult. Like, and kids, like, it's really easy to imagine. Well, where could the first mom have come from? I don't know. Some deity must have created the first mom, right?
Right. Yeah. It's kind of a kid's way of which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Kind of question. That's awesome. So so you said that you've already 300% over or on your Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So when is the book actually supposed to be available on the shelves, and do you know where it's going to be sold?
Those are all great questions. So we are on schedule to deliver the book in the first quarter of next year.
Okay.
So we don't have all the details yet, but I've done desktop publishing before, and my artist Karen Lewis is, she's a children's book illustrator, and we even have a business consultant working with us. So we've got all sorts of options for how we're going to make this happen. There's a possibility that we'll actually work with a publisher so that at the same time we're printing books to fulfill our Kickstarter, they are printing books that will then be part of their catalog, and then they'll be able to get it into, libraries and schools and where have you.
Okay.
If we don't do that, if we do it on our own, then at the very least it'll be available on Amazon. They do fulfillment by Amazon, and it's a really great system for small publishers to make their books available. But one way or another, for sure, people will be able to get the book, and in fact, one can pre-order it now.
Okay, awesome. And so I guess along with Amazon, have you had any thought of putting it into like the digital format for Kindle or anything?
So, good question. We are doing digital format. Some of our backers on Kickstarter are getting a digital version. Lots of international backers got the digital version, so they wouldn't have to pay shipping. Color storybooks, picture books are a little hard to sell digitally on Amazon because Amazon charges for the download time, and if you've got a book that's beautiful pictures, it takes a long time to download.
Okay.
So, that sort of, downloading a Kindle book, a self-published Kindle book, that's great if you're doing like fan fiction for Twilight because it's all text.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, but for a kid's color book, that's a hard one to make work.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know that. So they're charging you for the amount of how long it takes for.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's how Amazon works. That's a very fair system because it means the book that takes more of their time, more of their bandwidth to sell, they charge more for. Okay. It sucks for me because I've got a picture book, but if I had a textbook, if I had a book that was all in text, I wouldn't want to pay the same price that somebody else who's taking 10 times as much to download would have to pay.
Right.
So it's it makes sense.
And Amazon has their system figured out basically. So.
Yeah, everything's on a very thin margin there. So they're doing everything pretty much exactly right. Like I've got a lot of respect for maybe not all of their business practices, but certainly what a tight ship they run.
Right on. Okay. And so you were mentioning about how you were trying, or at least your publicist was talking about getting this into schools. I mean, is there going to be is that going to be kind of a definite thing that you're shooting for, or is there going to be kickback on that?
Yeah. So obviously the people who are backing the book, really want it to be out there and want people to be exposed to it. And lots of people, I think over 100 people, paid extra when they backed the book so that we would print an extra copy and donate that copy to a nonprofit. So there's definitely a lot of interest in doing that. We're on the hook now to donate over 100 copies to nonprofits.
Wow.
If we work with a publisher, then that publisher will have their means of getting books into schools and so forth. And the publisher that we're looking at is a children's nature book publisher. So it really fits very well our grandmother fish.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It's all it's a business. It's all about finding the right partners to work with.
Right. It's a possibility. It's just at this moment right now, it's still a possibility.
Nothing's been signed. Yeah, that's right.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, because we, like you were saying, there's this is the only book that's trying to go for this age demographic, and it would be a perfect opportunity, to have in kindergarten, preschool, for story time. This is an amazing book to do that.
Yeah. Apparently, Montessori schools teach evolution to young children.
Oh.
And so another children's book author has suggested maybe Montessori schools would be interested in it. So that's another possibility we can pursue.
Nice, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and all right. So you were saying that you've been getting a lot of good feedback. I mean, I gotta ask, have you had any people who think that this is hate mail and a horrible idea, think that you're just corrupting children?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, seducing them as well. I mean, we definitely had our share of sort of angry people for whom the idea of teaching evolution to children is just, an abomination, right? And it's like a sign of the end times that this book is being published or something.
Wow.
I sort of expected that. The thing that bugged me is there are also people who aren't creationists, but they hear about the book and don't like it. They assume that it's not, instead of actually like teaching something interesting about evolution, that it is just indoctrinating the kid. It's like trying to get the kid to, say, recite by rote something about evolution or whatever, like as if it's sort of like a creed that we're trying to get them to sign on to, right? But what's great about the book is that it shows the child how to see evidence for themselves, right? Oh, look at all these animals that all, have jaws and can breathe and walk around on four legs, right? It's like they can all sort of see where that came from because the book lays it out for them one step at a time.
Yeah, so, and it also, I think that it would also help to set kind of a foundation for them to also look, in the world around them, with animals that they own or that they see, they can.
A family dog, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Wow. I still got to say it's an amazing concept, and I cannot wait to get it. We have the digital download, but When was the date that you said that you had set for it again?
So March 2015. So
March 2015.
yeah,
All right,
that's right.
awesome. So we'll have to keep an eye out on that and
Yeah,
keep
absolutely. Yeah.
on
Well,
this.
you'll hear about it when it's getting done. I'll be sure to let you know.
Perfect.
Very exciting.
We'll have to feature it on our show when we get our copy from you here.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, this was going to be, just a short show. Wanted to talk to you just about your book and everything. So, not going to bother getting into crazy news that's happening around the world here. Save that for another time.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
You bet.
And the book, everybody who wants to check it out, is Grandmother Fish. I got links in the description. There it is, right there. Right there.
Yeah.
And I have links in the description, and we'll keep you updated on when the progress of the book. And everybody, go follow Jonathan if you want to pimp your where we can find you here.
Yeah, so Twitter's really good for me, at Jonathan M. Tweet, M as in Michael, because that's my middle name, so at Jonathan M. Tweet. And that's the best place to track me. I've got a pretty good Google Plus page, but if I do anything interesting, I'll tweet about it on Twitter. There's a Facebook page for Grandmother Fish, and she has her own Twitter account, but now that the Kickstarter's over, I'm mostly doing my stuff at Jonathan M. Tweet. I've got a blog that I just started again now that Grandmother Fish, the Kickstarter, is over.
Oh,
so that's
right.
It's called Atheist Sunday School, and that's it's a Jonathan Tweet blog spot. So if you can just Google Atheist Sunday School, or maybe you can put links in the show notes or something.
Yeah,
that's
I'll have to get the link from you, and I'll put that in the description below, and I'll have all your Twitters and Twitters and all of that.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that way people can find you, can get the book. All right, so just quick announcement before we end here. So I am actually going to be taking next week off. That goes along with changes in the show and everything, but the main reason is that it's my birthday weekend.
Yay.
Yeah, woo! So I'm not going to be able to do a show because I hope to not be functional enough to be able to do a show. So keep an eye out. We'll be back on, not the 31st. When is it? The 7th.
Yeah.
And we will get back to our hijinks going on here. So, Jonathan, again, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, that's great.
If you have any more book ideas, hit me up. We'll do the exclusive for you.
All right. Well, there's a couple things I'm working on, so I'll be sure to let you know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks very much, Dave.
No problem. All right. So, again, thank you, everybody, for watching and hanging out with us for this late edition of the show. You can find us again on Twitter by searching for Prophetcast. Go to thoughtprophets.com. Find us on Facebook. Simply search for Thought Prophets. And you have a godless life.